We're in for a treat this morning. We are in the esteemed company of past Rotary International President and Rotary International Foundation Trustee Chair, Ian Riseley, and Rotary International President for 24-25, Stephanie Urchick. For those that don't know, Stephanie is a member of the Rotary Club of Murray in Pennsylvania, USA, and is a selection of the nominating committee for President of Rotary International, as I said, in 24-25. Only the second woman to hold this position, so that's excellent and outstanding. Stephanie, we very much appreciate that you have taken time from your very busy schedule to have this chat with Ian and ourselves. And it is Rotary Foundation Month, and if it's not already your charity of choice, it should be. To the body of the audience, should you have any questions, please use the chat facility at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get through as many as possible at the end of the discussion. Apart from that, please remain on mute. But for now, briefly unmute yourselves and join me in welcoming Stephanie and Ian. A little bit of round of applause. Thank you. Very good. Excellent.
Pleasure. Pleasure.
Over to you, Ian.
Thank you, Governor Ken. Can I follow your advice and ask everyone, please now mute, because otherwise, Jeffrey Tickner, I can see you in the bottom left-hand corner. I don't want your snoring to disturb the rest of us. So welcome, everyone, to, let's call it a tradition. If 2 years in a row is the start of a tradition, then we have a tradition, and the tradition is that that someone in 9810, so far me, gets the opportunity to interview the president nominee, and without trying to correct the governor on a regular basis, which I'm afraid I do, Ken, Stephanie is now much more than the selection of the nominating committee. Stephanie is now our president nominee. So there's no backing out now. She's in for the long haul, which is terrific. So President nominee Stephanie, welcome virtually to Australia, and in particular to District 9810. It's wonderful to have you with us. We have a fair crowd with us today. Thank you for your flexibility in the time of day that it was going to be, because
of course,
in Pennsylvania and Eastern Australia, the time zones are challenging, shall we say. So I think it was a really good idea for David Alexander to settle on this timing, which suits you. I also welcome, and I'll talk about him later, your trusty aide, past District Governor Tom Gump from Minnesota, who is adorned with one of the great Rotary ties. So thank you, Tom, for the gesture. Very nice, wonderful. The crowd is a bit like a Steelers game, Stephanie. They could get rowdy before the morning is out, but there you go.
Yes.
Yeah. Now you're no stranger to Australia. In fact, you were kind enough to represent the president at a joint district conference in Melbourne a few years ago. Indeed, I do recall that Juliet and I took you to inspect Rod Laver Arena, which is the site of the convention in the coming May. Tell us what your impression is or was of the great city of Melbourne and the convention facilities.
Well, before I do that, Trustee Chair Ian, I do want to say hello to my family of Rotary in Australia and beyond. And it is a pleasure to be with you, and I certainly appreciate you all getting up early on a Sunday to do this. For me, it is evening on Saturday, but I really am delighted to be here. As Ian suggested, we did have an opportunity to visit the site of the Melbourne Convention. And I'll tell you this about the city. First of all, I thought it was splendid. It is active. It is a busy place. It was easy to maneuver, and the people were just outstanding. Just to this day, I'm still corresponding with people who have kept up through Facebook or email. So it was a real pleasure to get to know more people in all four of the districts that I was able to visit. As far as the facility, Ian, I remember you were very, very busy checking out the staging and the lighting and the acoustics. Juliet and I got practical. We sat down in the seats to make sure they were comfortable, and then we checked out the ladies' room to make sure everything was okay. So it's a splendid place, and it's going to serve us really well.
Excellent. Just remind me again how you pronounce the name of this city.
Melbourne.
Oh, that's not bad. Very good. I've been, as you know, through various parts of East Asia recently, and the number of Melbournes you get is astonishing. So you have it exactly right, Doc. So thank you.
Well, good.
By the way,
good.
it's not that early here. We started at 10 a.m. So it's don't give them too much credit for getting up earlier. That isn't quite the case. Now,
okay.
Of course, it will be at the Melbourne Convention that you'll be confirmed as the president-elect. A formality, but notwithstanding, if you're like me, when it comes up and it happens at the voting session, I was sure that there'd be some idiot Australian who would go nay when the time came. But fortunately, that didn't happen to me. I trust it won't happen to you too. No pressure to you, but we're expecting a fabulous but short speech from you in Melbourne. That'll be great.
I'll do my best.
Indeed. Now, my first question today relates to the fact that you are indeed Dr. Stephanie. Tell us about your area of study.
Well, my background is in higher education. As you know, I spent almost 30 years working in colleges and universities, and always in management and administration. So I was never in the classroom. I had always wanted to study and read all the great leaders and their theories about leadership. And so when I found this program that was being offered by one of the state universities in Pennsylvania, it was set up to be attractive for adult learners, meaning that I could keep my employment and then travel to the campus just on Fridays and Saturdays, only 5 times during the semester. So it really worked out. It was a splendid program. And I was able to, read all those things and, go through the coursework and then do my research and write, as my friend called it, the big book report. And then earned my degree in leadership studies. So it served me well in higher education, and it's serving me well as I move through life in Rotary, helping to train leaders.
Let's dwell on that for a second, because a lot of people believe that being in a Rotary club, or being part of the Rotary organization, is a really significant advantage if you seek to have a leadership role elsewhere. It sounds like you'd agree with that.
I would. When we're in Rotary clubs, even if we don't have the title of an officer, we are leaders, because from time to time we step forward and we lead a project, or we lead a social activity, or we lead something. So we get an opportunity to use the skills that we've developed in our professional lives, and we get to use them in the Rotary arena. It's very true.
There's also the advantage, and this is off script, shall I say, there's also the advantage that being a participant in a Rotary club doesn't just encourage you to improve public speaking and all that sort of thing. It sort of forces you. And I think Rotary in itself is a leadership program.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. When you say yes to Rotary, you're saying yes to those things, to, stepping forward and serving and leading and sharing the responsibilities in the club. So I agree, totally. It's a great opportunity to lead.
Now, on my screen, hovering over your left shoulder, is past District Governor and my good friend Tom Gump. And you've chosen he and Catherine from Minnesota as your aides. Now, you probably haven't talked to Tom about this, but you can tell us. What are your expectations of Tom and Catherine?
Well, first and foremost, I'm going to look to both of them to be extra sets of eyes and ears for me. I think one of the important things for any leader is to listen. You have to listen to what people are saying. And, we know that the magic of Rotary doesn't happen where you and I are, Ian, in the boardrooms. It happens in the clubs. So we want to make sure that we're listening to what clubs have to say. We want to make sure that, we're accessible and, listen to the things that are happening. So, Tom is an expert in helping develop new clubs, and new clubs are the future of Rotary. When we have new clubs, we have new members, and we have new members, then we have more potential for donations to the Rotary Foundation. So everything is connected. I'm very fond of saying in Rotary, it's not about or, it's and. This and that, it's and. Everything is connected. So I'm going to look to Tom and Catherine to make sure that we see all of those connections and everything is handled correctly.
Excellent. Allow me briefly to pay credit to Tom, because he's a very creative person. He just doesn't look like it because he's huge. He's much taller than me, and he can be a bit intimidating. But having said that, he's full of really creative ideas about clubs. And as you say, Stephanie, that is where everything happens in Rotary. And Tom, I pay tribute to your creativity and your desire for our organization to have to adopt and to embrace different kinds of clubs. And I know you've got for example, I remember the Veterans Club you've got in Minnesota, and lots of other, we won't call them special interest, but they are niche clubs. A lot to be said for that. So, and my friend on the way past, congratulations. That's terrific. Now, Dr.
Tom and I are on a gaming club, and we're working on a chocolate lovers club, and we might be working on a motorcycle bike riding club. So he's not at a loss for ideas, Ian. He definitely has ideas.
What was the first one? A gaming club?
Gaming, yes, for people who are into gaming. Gaming for good, gaming for Rotary, absolutely. That's a very popular thing today, gaming. I don't know how to do it. I don't have a console, but lots of people do.
Okay, see, in some parts of the world, Stephanie, I need to tell you that gaming is gambling, and that's not what you're talking about.
Well, you never know.
See, we've just given Tom yet another idea. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, tell us, before we talk about the foundation, what little hints can you give us about the likely emphases you're going to have in the year of 24-25?
Well, there are several things that are definitely on my radar screen. One is we must help get our strategic plan into the club. So I'll be very interested in moving the action plan forward. I also have an interest in healing a divided world through the tools that we have in Rotary. There's just so much going on in the world. There's political conflict, there's personal conflict, there's just all sorts of things. And I think we have some tools in Rotary that can help us deal with healing that. We certainly want to learn, we want to continue to learn from the lessons that the pandemic taught us. One of the things that we know for sure is that it's become very easy to connect people. Look at us right now. We've connected. It's not ideal. It's not the same as being in the room with people and getting the hug and the handshake, granted, but it is a way to make connections. So I want to take advantage of the lessons that we've learned and continue to move those forward. And continuity will be important because there are so many things that have happened with Jennifer and her presidency and Gordon coming up. And, I don't want to lose sight of the things that are happening that give us impact as an organization. So we'll continue, to look at continuity. So those are just some ideas about things that are on my radar. So peace is certainly there, healing a divided world, moving the action plan forward. Those are all important.
Thank you. Most interesting. Now, the Rotary Foundation. You and I enjoyed membership of the Board of Trustees together at the same time. And I could tell you stories, folks, but in due deference to our president nominee, I probably won't. The fact that you're a trustee before you were a director indicates your commitment to our Rotary Foundation. Tell us about what it is about the Rotary Foundation that makes it special to you.
Well, I've been in Rotary for over 30 years, and I recall early on in my very first Rotary Club, where I spent 10 years, I remember looking at the foundation and being introduced to what it meant and recognizing that it was the arm of the organization that lets us do fabulous things around the world. And, I also sometimes think about purpose, our purpose in life, as we all do. What's our purpose? Why have we been put on the globe? And, for many people, there are fabulous things they do. For some people, the greatest thing that they can do is bring children into the world. And maybe they have these fabulous careers and all of that. I never had an opportunity to have children. So I find that a lot of times the things that I'm attracted to in the foundation are things that are making life better for children who are already here. So it answers my personal need to understand, what my purpose is.
Okay, you're a personal donor. I guess what you've just told us is what it is that motivates your personal generosity to the foundation. You mentioned on the way through your first club, where you were there for 10 years or so, was that isn't McMurray, that was elsewhere.
That was the Rotary Club of California, PA, that had another famous Rotarian as a member. Do you know who that was?
Yes, I do. I'm just trying to remember. Past president,
Chuck Keller.
Chuck, yes.
Yeah.
And I remember chatting to you when Chuck sadly passed. A great guy. And I've got some Chuck Keller stories too. Boy, do I. But anyway.
How lucky was I to have a Rotary godfather in my first club? It was amazing. Yeah.
Tell us about a particular project, because the Rotary Foundation is project driven. Tell us about a project that you've seen that was assisted by the foundation and that you found personally inspiring.
That's in a way is a very difficult question to answer, because every time I see the magic of the foundation at work, it is just totally impressive. But I am going to pick one because you used the word personally inspiring. So, years ago when I was young and my grandmother would talk about her family in Eastern Europe, she would often talk about family that was still in the Ukraine and in Poland and, different parts of Eastern Europe. And one day she said to me, "Here, I have something. I want to give you this slip of paper. These are your cousins." Because she heard that I had been asked to be a president's rep and I was going to the Ukraine. So she said, "I want you to find them. Go, these are your cousins." So of course I went to the Ukraine, and I met the family, and just very, very poor. I remember emptying my purse and giving the family everything I had. They came to see me in Kyiv. They had one car for 17 people. They couldn't believe that I had my own vehicle, that I didn't have to share it with anybody. So when I came back from that experience, I kept thinking about, the people in that part of the world. And somewhere, as I was getting ready to work with my district on grant activity, back then it was matching grants. This was before Future Vision. I read an article about a hospital in Southeast Poland that had no mammography equipment. They had a machine, but it had broken, so they red tagged it and pushed it in a corner. So we started to do some research. In this part of the world, in the United States at that time, the survival rate from breast cancer was greater than 70%. But in that part of Poland, it was way below 50%. And it wasn't because they had more cases of cancer. They simply didn't have early detection. And I thought, bingo, this is something that every Rotarian can wrap their hands around, because every Rotarian has a special woman in his or her life. Mothers, wives, sisters, daughters, aunts. It's amazing. So we asked every club in my district at that time to embrace that project and to do some fundraising. So every club did, and they did different things. One club had a softball tournament. One club sponsored a polka dance. Another club sold pierogies outside of a supermarket in the afternoon. They were very, very creative. And we collected all that money. We were able to support a matching grant, and we got from the foundation enough money to get a biopsy unit. And we worked with Siemens in Germany, and they waived all the value-added taxes, and they got that equipment into that hospital in Southeast Poland. And I was able to take a friendship team to Southeast Poland. The community was called Nowa Huta, and we went for the dedication. Now, you would think a dedication of a piece of equipment, the hospital would be there. Holy smokes, the media was there, the bishop was there, the district governor came down from the north of the country. It was a big deal. And I'll never forget the looks on the faces of the technicians who had been trained. And they were just beaming and smiling. And so for 10 years, we worked with the Rotary Club of Krakow, and they continued to buy the film. Now, of course, it's all digital mammography, but then it was the film. And we looked at the number of mammograms they did. They had done over 5,000 mammograms before that equipment was replaced with new equipment. So think about how many Polish lives we all saved, all of us. Every one of us who have ever donated to the foundation helped, and we don't know those people. We'll never meet those people, although some of them may have been my relatives. I don't know. So that's the one that was, to me, personally inspiring, because it meant something because of my heritage.
What a great story. What a great story. And that really does typify our foundation. Tell us a bit about your ancestry, where your folks are from, etc.
Well, my father's family is from the Slovak Republic. And my father was born in this country, but my grandparents were born in the Slovak Republic. My mother's family were a group called Rusins, and they were people that didn't have a country because the borders kept changing because of the wars. So sometimes their villages were in Poland, sometimes they were in Austria, sometimes they were in Ukraine. Where my grandparents' village currently is in a small town in Poland. And I've had an opportunity to visit it. When I was asked to be a district governor in Poland, I asked my friends at the Rotary Club of Krakow if they could find a driver who could find this teeny tiny little village called Losza. And they said, give us a couple of days. And they came back and they said, we found a driver who can find it. So I paid the driver. It took two and a half hours to drive from Krakow, and I had emailed ahead to a cousin who taught English. So he understood English. He met me. And when we went down into this village, people came out on their patios. They were all dressed in black, men, women, and they were screaming at me in our language. They were saying, we know who you are. You're Maxim's great-great-great-granddaughter. I got chills because everybody in the whole place knew me. It was amazing, just amazing. So, and Rotary let me do that.
Yeah.
So
You mentioned Krakow, which I think is one of the two finalists for a Rotary convention in, is it 27, something like that, 28?
Possibly, yeah. I've lost track of it.
Yeah.
They do so far out.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. Let's talk about the annual fund of the Rotary Foundation, and contributions continue to grow. I requested a modest increase, and I'm sure I won't preempt what Barry's going to say at the IA, but it's not going to go backwards. the growth is not necessarily as quick as the demand from Rotarians for global grants, but it's still growing. What do you think it is about the annual fund of our Rotary Foundation that makes it an attractive destination for Rotarian contributions?
Well, I think one thing for sure is the fact that our areas of focus are so broad. No matter what passion you have, there is something in our foundation that you can look at and it can satisfy your need for philanthropy because it's so broad. The other thing that always amazes me about our foundation is the fact that it is a charity that ends up coming back to your district. I mean, you know, I give to a lot of different things, but money never comes back from those other organizations, but it does. It comes back in the form of district grants, and it allows us, you know, to take a look at things in our own communities, if that's where we choose to use it, or, you know, other things internationally. And so I think that's a very, very strong selling point for people to look at, considering making Rotary their charity of choice, as has been said earlier. You know, there is a statistic, though, that alarms me, and you're aware of it, I'm sure, that only 38% of Rotarians donate to the foundation. That to me is absolutely alarming, because I don't understand how Rotarians cannot see that the foundation is the arm of the organization that lets us do all that wonderful, wonderful work around the world. So we need to do more work to get our colleagues in our clubs to understand how important it is to donate to the foundation.
And those of us in Australia need to be conscious of the fact that we have the Australian Rotary Foundation Trust that enables us to get a tax deduction for contribution to the foundation, which wasn't the case sort of 20 years ago. So in inverted commas, there's no excuse anymore for not adopting the Rotary Foundation as one of our charities of choice. I agree with you entirely. The other aspect of foundation philanthropy is the endowment funds, of which we have several. It seems to me that enables people who take a longer term view of the work of the Rotary Foundation to contribute in a different perspective. You'd agree with that?
Absolutely. You know, Tom has heard me say this, Tom Gump has heard me say this 1,000 times. I love Rotary. I absolutely love it, like all of you on this call do. But I realize I'm not going to be here forever. And I want to be sure that when I am gone, that the work of Rotary continues, that the magic of Rotary continues, which is why I am a Bequest Society member. I want to make sure that there will be some good things happening in the world after I'm no longer here. So that's my personal reason for looking at our endowment fund and choosing to support it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah. You may be interested to know that Australia has the second highest uptake of membership of the New Legacy Society, which is where people make a pledge a significant bequest to the Rotary Foundation. What do you think of the New Legacy Society? And I have to say, folks definitely would be aware that I was actively pushing the establishment of this back when we were in trustees together. So I think I know what you're going to say, but tell me, Stephanie, what do you think of the Legacy Society?
Well, I think it's an absolutely brilliant idea, because people are apt to want to donate to something that has a goal. People are goal driven. So, you know, having something like the Legacy Society gives them that goal, that opportunity to say, this is where my contributions are going, and this is what I'm going to aim for. So I am all for that. I think it's a brilliant way for us to get people to commit to this lifetime of service through the Rotary Foundation.
Yeah. Seems to me that not everyone is in a position to be significantly generous to the foundation in their lifetime. We might have our assets tied up in, well, housing down here in Australia,
Mhm.
it's outrageously expensive, or business and all sorts of things. Whereas once we're gone, then there's the opportunity for part of our estate to benefit our foundation. It just seems like a no-brainer to me.
Of course.
Yeah. Now, we have a series of levels of contribution to the Rotary Foundation down here. I guess they have them everywhere. And we have a number of members of the Paul Harris Society who commit to contribute $1,000 every year, which is wonderful, and it helps people reach major donor status. In addition, one of the support groups is the Centurion Club, where members contribute 100 Australian dollars every year. And one of the purposes of today's gathering is to officially launch Centurion Week. Do you have a similar structure in the US?
Actually, we do. There is something that has gained popularity in the United States. Districts have created the Polio Plus Society. So that is a society where Rotarians or others commit to making a donation of at least $100 each year to Polio Plus. And, you know, that's significant because of how long we've been working on Polio Plus. You know, we will have such a great impact when polio is eradicated. But of course, we have donor fatigue, we have volunteer fatigue. So having something like this society, which is brand new, really gives people that extra, okay, this is what I need to do because we want to get over that barrier. We want to get over that line and make sure that it gets completed.
Yeah, and of course, the $50 million target that we have, because that's the maximum figure, which will be trebled by our friends at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And in earlier days, it wasn't that difficult to get to 50 million. It's both 50 million to raise and spend. We have no trouble spending it. But in the last couple of years, it's been close. So I'm always preaching the fact that we really cannot leave a contribution from the Gates Foundation on the table. That would be silly. So we really need to get to 50 million US every single year. You're exactly right on that. Now, I know you well, and I have no hesitation in saying that you are a thinker. Do you ever dwell upon the need for us as Rotarians to leave the world, and I know you do, but this is a lead-in, to leave the world in a better and more peaceful state than when we each arrived?
Absolutely. You know, several questions ago, you asked me about what's important to me, and I did mention healing a divided world. And that is based in my interest in peace. So when we come upon the year 2024, I am hopeful that we can have a major event at our newest Peace Center in the Middle East, wherever that's going to be located, so that we can bring together our alumni, our Peace Fellow alumni, and we can shine a spotlight on what it is that we do. I'm also interested in asking every club in the world as an engagement activity to do something with our four-way test without giving it away. That's probably where I will leave it, but I am going to ask every club to do that because that is such an important tool that we have. You know, I'm very fond of saying, you know, if people would live the four-way test instead of just recite it, wouldn't we have a much better and peaceful world? You know, I was scrolling through Facebook yesterday, and you know, I saw something that was so intriguing to me. Somebody had posted something that said, you know, why is it that when people pass away, we are fond of saying rest in peace? Why don't we have something that says live in peace? And I thought, yeah, why don't we? Because you know that's really what we should be doing. But anyway, yes. I hope that we can use the power of Rotary to help move us forward so that we can make an impact on the world and do some things with the tools that we have as Rotarians.
You mentioned the 38% worldwide of Rotarians that personally contribute to the foundation. I would point out that in Australia, some people contribute indirectly through their clubs, so maybe our figure is a little distorted. But what can you say to those on the call today that would encourage them to contribute either for the first time or to keep contributing to our Rotary Foundation?
I would encourage people, if you have opportunities to see the foundation at work, whether it's on a project that is international or whether it's through a district grant in your own community, do that. Look at the faces of those children who are standing in line waiting to get drops of polio. Look at the faces of the little children in the Dominican Republic who are looking and watching as filters are being installed, and they're looking at dirty water and it's coming out clean all of a sudden. Or, look at the faces of, the women in Poland who are standing there waiting for mammography because suddenly they have an opportunity to have early detection and maybe, beat the disease. So when we have opportunities to experience the foundation and we can see it firsthand, that's great. If we can't, then listen to the stories of those people in our clubs and in our districts who do have those opportunities, because those are they're just the best sales pitch that we have, to talk about the people that we are saving. Think about our vision statement, it talks about it. We're people of action. So together we're creating lasting change around the globe and in our communities and in ourselves. And it's that last part of that statement that is so important, in ourselves. I always tell people, I get the same salary as everybody else in Rotary gets, all right? But what I get is psychic income. It makes me feel good to do the work of Rotary. It makes me feel good to do the work of the foundation. And that's what we want. We should look for more and more of that psychic income. That's what we're after.
Love it. You mentioned those that have the chance to personally get involved on the call today. And I see on my screen just below you is past Governor Bob Richards, and he's one of those who's been to Moradabad in India with immunisation. And also, of course, as a result of the visit to Moradabad, Bob and his late wife Jill and various other luminaries of Rotary in our district undertook some project work to improve Moradabad beyond polio. And it seems to me that's exactly the sort of thing where you get the warm fuzzies. And if you've got the chance to personally do it, that's great. But if you haven't, we all need to know that there are people, volunteers out there who are doing a wonderful job in the name of the foundation, in the name of Rotary, which is
absolutely.
Yeah. Now, you've been president nominee now for almost 2 months. You'd be getting used to it almost. Have you yet given any thought to how you can do something specific to support the Rotary Foundation when you're president? And I guess you've already given us a bit of an outline of that.
Well, the biggest thing that I hope to accomplish is to support our peace centers and to really highlight what's going on, especially in our newest peace center in the Middle East. And obviously I talked about the continuity with polio. That's going to be critical. And I'm all about the action plan. And when you think about the action plan and the 4 priorities of increasing our impact, expanding our reach, and increasing engagement, and improving our ability to adapt, when you think about all of those, everything that happens under each one of those priority umbrellas is all connected. So when we get better in any of those, we're going to get better entirely as a whole organization. So our Rotary Foundation is going to get better. Rotary International is going to get better. So we really want to move and ask our clubs to really think long and hard about how to make themselves simply irresistible. When they do that, our membership challenges and our foundation challenges will take care of themselves, because we'll be so attractive that people will want to say, I need to be part of this organization. Look at the things they're doing. And people who are in our organization will say, I'm not leaving. This is terrific. I want to stay here and continue to do the good work that's going on. So that's my message to clubs around the world. Let's get to the point where we can all say that our clubs are simply irresistible. And if they're already there, let's keep them there.
Good stuff. Now, we have a number of questions, but before turning to them, you're aware of the fact that the regionalisation pilot is in 2 parts of the world, including our zone.
Yes.
What's your thinking on the pilot in terms of the desirability of it, and what you think is going to be the outcome?
Well, as a whole, regionalization is just common sense to me. I mean, we are in 200 different countries and locations. We have different cultures, we have different languages, we have different ways of doing things. The way Rotary happens in McMurray, Pennsylvania is not the way it happens in Minnesota, not the way it happens in Australia. It's different. It's different. So regionalization to me conceptually makes a lot of sense. What I like about the pilots is that both of the areas came to Rotary and said, you know, we think that there's probably a better way to do what we're doing, and let's test it. And that's what a pilot program is. It's a test. You try it, and if it works, fabulous. If it doesn't work, okay, you found one way that isn't going to make any improvement, you move on to something else. So I am all for the pilots. I hope that they bring some positive results, but like I said, even if they don't, then like Edison, you've just figured out one way that isn't going to work and you move on to something else. But we really do need to think about, you know, how to make regionalization work. You know, that's one of the reasons in our action plan that there's not a cookbook. You know, Rotarians were so used to getting a document or you know, a guide and say, do this, do that, and everything, you're going to be compliant, everything is fine. And that's not what the action plan really means. Clubs around the world have to look at each one of those priorities and localize it, because expanding our reach can mean something very different to different clubs, even if they're in the same zone, or, you know, even if they're in the same district. So every club has to work with those, you know, 4 priorities and say, what does this mean for us locally? And how can we wrap our hands around it? And what should we do with it? And maybe there aren't things that they can do and they move on to another priority, but it has to be localized. So I am all for regionalization. I am a big fan of it, but I think it has to come from the area itself.
Yeah. Okay. Well said. President Jennifer has emphasized DEI this year.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see the opportunity to continue to increase diversity in Rotary?
One of the things that's important to me is expanding DEI so that we look at something called DEIB. We add the letter B to it, because, you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion are things that happen that we create in an environment. But the B is how we feel personally. Do we feel like we belong? Is this the right place for us? So I think it's important to look at our events, our meetings, our projects, and make sure that we add that B so that people have an opportunity to say, yep, this is really my group. This is where I belong.
There's a question here that I think gets to the nub of one of the problems we have with our Rotary Foundation. Let me read it to you. It seems that we still have many outside Rotary who don't really know about the wonderful things that Rotary does through the foundation. How can we promote this more successfully?
Okay. I am all about that question, because I think for too long we've talked to ourselves. All right. We need to talk outside of Rotary. I mean, yeah, we need to spend time with our own Rotarians, but But think about, an international convention, we get 20,000 people in an arena. Well, guess what? They all know about Rotary. And they all know we really need to be educating others. So as they come into our clubs, they know about the Rotary Foundation. They know about the work of Rotary. There's something in, this comes from my education, there's something called the PIE model of success. It is an acronym, PIE. And it talks about what any organization or any business or any corporation needs to be successful. So the first P stands for performance. There's no question. The Rotary Foundation has got this one covered. I mean, when we go places, we are changing lives. We are in all areas of focus. We are doing amazing things. Think about all the trees we planted, Ian, and all that wonderfulness that we did for the world. Just a fabulous opportunity there. But P is only 10% of success. So then you move on to the I. The I stands for image. And you know that, for a couple of decades, Rotary worked very hard on rebranding. And so all our logos are similar and our colors are the same. And, everything, looks professional. So people who encounter us in that manner, they know that we're very professional, but that's only 30% of success. So that means that 60% of success rests on that last letter, which is E, and that stands for exposure. And that's where we need to do more work. Yes, we need to do more work with media. Yes, we need to do more work with social media. We need to do all of it. Remember, I said and. Now let's face it. You heard me say, I know how to use Facebook. I'm over 60. I figured it out. Okay. But I don't know how to use Instagram. I don't know how to use Twitch. I don't know how to use any of those other ones. But you know what? The people we want to attract, they do. So we need to really get behind, our young professionals, our other professionals in our club who have those abilities and who know how to do what they're doing. In fact, I'm going to put him on the spot here, and I'm going to ask my aide, Tom Gump, if he will come on screen for a minute and talk about the TikTok challenge. Tom, are you still with us?
I am, and thank you very much. What we're trying to do is we're trying to celebrate Rotary, and we're trying to celebrate the selection of Stephanie as our Rotary International President nominee. And we've had great response from all over the world, from Rotaract clubs, Interact clubs. I know my district, we had our district governor, we had a Rotaractor, we had an Interactor. And we're just trying to get the word out that it's not all about our legacy clubs, but it's also about our new clubs. And Stephanie and I really believe one of the ways that we actually reach gender parity and we reach diversity is by reaching out in the community and bringing in those people of action that aren't already a part of our traditional clubs. So we can send you information about it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tom. See, he's not just a pretty face, he actually speaks.
I told you he was a great aide.
Well, in which case, now that you've opened up the concept of discussing and putting issues to Tom, I've got a question here that I'd like to get his opinion on before throwing to you. It says, what are your thoughts on bringing more young and business people into the organization while understanding the current business models that include some of the things Rotary stands for that may mean they don't look to Rotary? Tom?
So we all love our traditional clubs, what Stephanie calls our legacy clubs. Rotary is built on those. I love my club. I would never leave it. We meet at 7:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning at a country club. But let's face it, not every single person is able to fit in one of our clubs. I mean, we have 1.4 million Rotarians and Rotaractors around the world. But if we changed our models and allowed for new clubs, then we'd be able to bring in more people that aren't a part of our traditions now. And I'm not saying we should take our clubs and turn them on their heads. I mean, what we should do is we should do assessments. We should see if we can improve. But if there comes a situation, Stephanie and I were in Thailand virtually the other day and speaking. And, they in that culture respect their elders so much that they're afraid to change because they're afraid that it's going to alienate their senior members. So in that particular district, our average district, let's say it's 3,000 people and there's 60 some clubs. In that part of the world, they might have 120 clubs with the same amount of people. Now, next door in Vietnam, it might be change. But what the new clubs allow you to do is not alienate people by making too many changes, but letting people of action say when they want to meet, where they want to meet, and then we could reach the same objective. Thank you for the question.
And also how they want to meet, Tom. And you've been one of the leaders in encouraging different methods of meeting, which does the old days. I shouldn't say. Hang on, that's a pejorative. I don't mean the old days. I mean traditionally, people were actively encouraged and disparaged if they didn't rock along every week to their in-person meeting. Those days are rapidly changing, and I know you're at the forefront of devising ways in which people can be actively involved in Rotary without necessarily being able to personally meet every week. Yeah. Have you got anything to add to that, Stephanie?
I do, Ian. I want to tell you about a special kind of opportunity that my club recently engaged in. We started something called an Impact Satellite Group. Impact is a satellite model that originated in North Carolina in the US. The Impact Club model, they don't meet at all. They don't have a meeting place. They go out twice a month and they do service. Then if they want to go have pizza or go have a soda, fine. They are invited to all of our meetings if they want to come, but they don't. That's one of the reasons they didn't come in the first place. They come to our socials if they want to, and they have done that. They're invited to everything. They pay full Rotary dues. They are full members. When we inducted our group last month, we went from 40 members to 55 members in one night. There is such power in looking at new models and reaching out to them.
Right. Okay. That's fascinating. That's very good. Yeah, I see the future there. We have a question from one of our neighbouring colleagues, the governor in our neighbouring district of 9790. The question is, how can we get more donations to the foundation from outside of Rotary? I happen to think, thank you, David, this is a really important question.
Well, I think there's been efforts along those lines, and you probably know this better than I, Ian, about reaching out to corporations. I mean, obviously, our biggest level of support outside of Rotary has been Bill and Melinda Gates. I mean, when you think about the amount of money that they have proffered, as match to what we're doing, is absolutely outstanding. But I think that there are other opportunities. I know, that there are Rotarians within India who are reaching out to people. There are Rotarians, all over the world. We actually have a person on Rotary staff who is called the Director of Principal Gifts. And his goal is really to reach out to people who are able to give $1 million or more. So there is an opportunity for us, and we need to get better at it, because I think that there's a lot of there's a lot of places that we haven't even thought about yet. So yeah, that's an area for improvement.
Interestingly, in Australia, we've recently set up a structure which enables other kinds of charities that are able to raise money but need to give it to a specific charitable activity. We've set up something which enables them to do that through the Rotary Foundation. And I'm really confident that will get legs over a period of time, because there are, and I can't remember the figures off the top of my head, but we are talking of hundreds of millions of dollars a year that are raised by such groups. Like, well, an example is the Bendigo and Adelaide Bank. When there's a problem, they have an appeal, and the money comes into their bank. They then have to give it to someone to make a difference. And if we have projects that match that, then they can fund it. And I think that's definitely the way of the future. I think that's right. Just a comment from past Governor Jenny Coburn that talks about Box Hill Central having a volunteering with friends satellite club. Sounds like a similar approach to what you were talking about. Great idea.
Great.
Again, if it involves more people in Rotary, that has to be a plus. I'm conscious of the fact, Governor Ken, assuming I go back to Governor Ken, that we're about 4 minutes out. So are there, excuse me, any closing comments you want to make, Governor?
Thank you, Ian. Yes, I've never known an hour to go so quickly. It's just been really, really interesting. Healing the divided world. I think that's an outstanding statement, and let's hope we can do that and make a bit of a difference in the role that Rotary will continue to play in this endeavour. And your ongoing commitment, Stephanie, to the Rotary Foundation, I think we all understand your passion for the project in Poland. I think we all have a similar type project that we support. I will say that recently District 9810 was awarded the, and I hope I'm still here, my power just went off. Let's come back on. Recently District 9810 was awarded the Zone 8 Ian Riseley Cup for the largest per capita giving to the foundation for Zone 8. We have won it a couple of times before, but we need to win it again next year. So I ask everybody on the screen to just tip in a little bit more and make a difference. To those on screen, if you are not already a Centurion or possibly a Paul Harris Society member, please consider, and please take this message back to your clubs. Tom, I'm very interested in the TikTok club. It sounds, I'd love to have more details about that. And just in closing, once again, thank you, Stephanie, for giving us your time. It's been an absolute delight. Thank you for joining us, Tom. We'll look forward to seeing you in Melbourne in May. And thank you, Ian, because I think this is tradition is 2 years in, and I think we'll look forward to next year.
Ken, can I make the point, in case it needs to be made, that trophy is not the Ian Riseley Memorial Trophy. I'm still fine, but in fact, it was originally the Riseley Cup, but it has morphed a little bit over a period of time. And a final comment to my good friend Stephanie. You're always welcome back here in Muridock. It's the epicenter of all activity here, Stephanie, as you know.
I would love to. I would love to.
Yeah, well, you need to come soon because the grass is getting longer and I need a hand in having a cut. So there you go. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a lovely hour chatting with our president nominee and her trustee aide.